So, I'm a familiar now? 02 New friend, Viria POV. Viria woke up to her fifth day of her imprisonment. Her conditions were nice. Much nicer than what she expected would be offered to an assassin. The royal family obviously planned to have a proper hunt. She was getting healthy food and plenty of movement, but that only served as assurance of her fate closing onto her. Day by day, she had too much time to spend thinking of what will happen and when. That was obviously the main point of her imprisonment. She knew for sure that any Kerman would spend at most 30 minutes preparing for a hunting trip. So, there were two possibilities. Either they are letting her succumb to her own thoughts and imagination, or are waiting for their guests to arrive to the party. Or both. Fuck. I'm starting to think as they want me to think. I must stay strong to have a chance of escaping and getting back home to my family again. Mother needs me and the income my duty brings her. As she sat there, trying not to break down, Viria heard voices in front of her room. She could not understand them, as the door to her room was purposefully thick and muffled most outside noise. What she could tell was that one of the voices belonged to a female. Someone then inserted a key into the lock and latched her door. Viria did not even try to stand up, as she knew what was behind the wood and metal of the door. 8 fully armed guards with weapons aimed at the door just in case a prisoner would want to escape the inevitable. She knew because she was assigned this duty on occasions of important Kerman guests visiting the royal family. This place was nicely out of sight if you didn't look for it specifically, and she did not offend those guests by her presence anywhere else in the castle. She also knew what it meant that the armor-smith's servant had come to see her. Today was her last day in the castle. The last day she would sleep quietly on something distantly comfortable. Today they would take her measurements for a set of leather armor she would be given tomorrow before being taken to the forest of mushrooms. And then would her nightmares begin. Being hunted was probably the biggest fear of any sentient being, and even more so when you wouldn't have any weapons to defend yourself. Given the tiny amount of time the Kerman would give, all one could do is run or hide. Oh, well. At least I'll be better fed tonight. Tomorrow I'll have to find my Agnana. She might provide me with something to improve my odds of escaping. With her soured mood and hopeless circumstances, she went to sleep for what might be the last time. The morning came sooner than one would like. Normally the soldiers would let her sleep as much as she wanted. Not today. She was awakened at dawn by one of the guards mercilessly punching at her door. She had only moments for her hygiene, after which she was handcuffed and led to an armor-smith, where she received her armor. Rather than an armor, you could call it decorative leathers with her tamer's bag attached to one of the belts holding her furred shoulder protectors in place. The placing of her bag was unfortunate and, probably purposefully, unhandy to use. She had to reach across her chest to search inside the bag for her familiars and their food. With her hands tied behind her back, this was practically an impossible task to do. This armor, aside from giving her little to no protection, had two more features only the royal family, armor-smith, and guards knew of. One of them being a magic enhancement of the whole suit, including the buckle, which made it impossible to take off the armor for a full day after putting it on. This was important because of the second hidden feature. Before giving her the armor-smith would let it soak in a mix of chemicals that exuded a weak smell for a period of a full day. So weak, in fact, that only Kerman and few other races could even locate it. This made for a perfect tracking tool for the royals to find their prey more easily. They didn't have to look for tracks or broken twigs, all they had to do was to follow the smell of their target. It was a perfect trick. Most prisoners would be glad for any protection they would get, so they would happily take a set of armor so graciously offered to them, not even trying to take it off. This is what would spell doom for most of them. As most of them would try to hide themselves in the forest, after being forced to wear her armor, her arms were tied again, this time in front of her. She was thrown into a transport wagon and taken to the edge of the forest, where Kerman royalty partied with their guests. Her arrival meant that the main event was coming near, and all the guests came close and looked at, and secretly smelled, their target for today's hunt. In the distance, Virya could see some thunderclouds passing by, but those would not be coming this way to help her hide the path of her escape. This did not stop them from creating loud booms of thunder, reverberating across the land. A shame to be sure, but one she expected. Kerman would not choose a rainy day to make their hunt. All the guests and the royal family had gone to change into their hunting gear. Mostly, they used enchanted leather armor with metal tail coverings, some of which had been tipped with sharp blades or simple pike heads. A very significant difference from her misenchanted, crippled and heavier than normal leather armor. Virya watched as various heads of families sat in a circle, discussing how much time she would get to flee. This, however, did not stop their little pups from throwing rocks and food at her. They could not take part in the hunt yet, but they could annoy the prize. Seeing the discussion amongst the leaders had ended, Virya prepared herself to run. She had to escape them for a full day, before she could ditch her armor and find some place to wash off the leftover chemicals. Hopefully to hide from the hunters. She wouldn't know how much time she'd have before the hunters will start hunting her. But she had to do everything in her power to survive. Survive and get back home. Her guards came to the wagon and moved to the door, obviously not caring about her tied hands. This was a good sign, as she'd have more time this way. Obviously, she'd have to untie herself before she would take off the armor, but that comes later. She would have to survive up to that point to even think about it. As the door opened, Virya darted out and into the forest beyond, not wasting any time to look around. Plunging herself into the bushes, she ran down the slope of the hill, calling for Agnana. She might be able to free her hands, but there wasn't much chance of that. She would definitely have to find some sharp rocks and cut the rope tying her wrists. After 10 minutes of running wildly through the forest, Virya could sense Agnana nearby and called out to her familiar. After a while Agnana landed on her shoulder and Virya used her tamer skill thought share to tell her to try and cut the rope, which unfortunately didn't bring her the outcome she desired. Not being surprised with the failure in her plan, Virya used thought share to give Agnana a new request. Try to find some strong foes for the Kerman pursuing me. Agnana trilled approvingly and flew ahead of her, maintaining their psychic link and informing Virya of strong beings in front of her. Thanks to this, Virya knew when to change her course because of a pack of black wolves blocked her path in front, or when to adjust it to go past a tempest bear resting near water. About half an hour after she began her escape, Virya heard a sound of a horn reverberate from behind her. This signalized that the hunt had begun. Sooner than she expected, but any head start was better than none. However, her chances of survival have dropped significantly. She needed 4 hours to be sure she'd survive. An hour to still have a chance to last through the night. If nothing happened, she'd be dead before sunset. Now all she could do was to run ahead and rely on Agnana to find foes for her enemy. Noon was long gone, and Virya was already exhausted from running. Twice she had met the Kerman and twice she escaped with her life by playing with fire. The first time was before noon, when she met with one of the guests face to face and saved herself by jumping off a cliff, praying there was water deep enough at the bottom of her jump. The second one was just moments prior, when she met Prince Naker with his escort. Fortunately, there was an adult groin nearby, so she delayed them by waking it up. Now they were behind her again and were getting closer. Agnana was in front of her, looking for any beast to stop or at least distract them with, so she could escape. But everything seemed futile now. There was no cliff to jump off and no beast to distract her enemies. She'd probably die very soon. Is it even worth trying to escape? What will I get out of it? Maybe I should just accept my fate and... Her thought process was interrupted by Agnana. She found something she couldn't identify. All she could tell was that it was big and looked strong and intimidating. What else can I lose? Virya thought. I'll either be killed by the prince and his escorts, or that thing, whatever it is. I might even sneak past it and let it fight with those fuckers behind me. It hasn't noticed Agnana, so I might have a chance to slip by it unnoticed. Alright. Last attempt to get away. I'm finished either way, but this at least gives me a chance. Running on the path, her hopes kept increasing as she approached her familiar. Those hopes also died down when Agnana noticed the thing could see her and flew off the branch she was sitting on in a panic, right to her master's embrace. There was no way she was stealthier than Agnana while stationary. Furthermore, she had to keep running to escape the death from behind, so Agnana coming straight to her had blown her cover. She now had to rely on her speed to get past the thing faster than it could react, and then draw its attention to the Kerman. She turned to the left and made her way through the thick bush to the other side and around the thing. She stopped. Not because she wanted to or that there was nowhere else to run. She stopped at the sight of the thing in front of her. Daria was the tallest person she knew, but this thing was huge. Daria guessed that the thing in front was almost twice as tall as her, and saw it was bipedal and wore a strange cloth over its body that made it blend with the colors of the surrounding forest. She could also see one pair of arms raised above its head, holding something. The moment Daria stepped out of the bush, the thing's binocular vision buried deep inside her soul and stopped her in place. Its hands began to swing down, and she could see the metal part of a weapon come to her view, assaulting her at speeds she could not dodge even if she tried to. So this is how it ends, she thought and closed her eyes, sure of her fate. She waited for the strike to come. And waited. And waited. But there was no pain. Confused, Daria opened her eyes, just to see the thing looking at her carefully. Its weapon stopped high above her head and then slowly lowering itself off to the side. Her knees gave out and Daria fell to the ground at the mercy of the thing in front of her. She could not go on. All she could do was to hold Agnana close to her and watch it. The thing was alerted and stressed. That's what her tamer senses told her. It touched its chest and unlocked a weird black strap and took a weird bag she just now noticed off its back. It put the bag on the ground away from her and took out a strange metal bowl and filled it with water from another metal bottle. The bowl was then offered to her. She was grateful and reached out her tied hands to grasp it. Before she could grasp the bowl, however, the thing launched a terrifying kick that went over and behind her head, straight into the path of an attacking Kerman. With a sickening crack and a pained yelp, the Kerman was sent flying back through the bush it came through. Daria was stunned. She could not even hear the Kerman, yet this thing was able to see it and even kick it accurately while the Kerman jumped. She looked up at her savior and saw the blank face it showed. It looked back at her and slowly lowered its hand with open palm in front of her. After a moment of indecisiveness, Daria took hold of the palm and was surprised about the fact that she was lifted and placed in front of the weird bag. She sat down again and leaned against the surprisingly comfortable side. She also finally took a hold of the bowl of water she was offered. Drinking water felt great after a whole day on the run. She did not have many opportunities to drink something, and most of those she had, it was muddy water near stagnant ponds. She almost began to relax, but got alarmed by sounds of someone cutting their way through a bush. Looking at the thing, she saw it in a state of alert with its weapon in its hand again and looking at the bush in question. She then looked at the same bush just in time to see a group of 4 more Kerman enter the open area.